everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Pallas. Tonight, I am chatting with Timothy Warren and Andrew Wilson about Lent and the things we should really be giving up. Spoiler alert, not ice cream, not candy, none of that. Let's make it more difficult for your life. Please remember to keep all comments and questions related to the show topic and that this is a safe space. Thank you for joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. And thank you for welcoming us into your homes and joining the conversation. I appreciate you all. Okay, let's meet our guests and become more loving. Reverend Timothy Warren was ordained in the Episcopal Church in 2013. He is currently a priest with the Convergent Catholic Communion. He developed the outreach ministry, St. Francis ISM, which provides pastoral care to those in the community and via social media. Father, not friar, as it says on the screen, Father Tim is a retired Air Force reservist and a retired public school teacher. He lives in Phelan, California. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. Oh, and just a quick update. I'm no longer with the Convergent Catholic Communion. I'm strictly independent now.
Oh, okay. So we need to update your profile for the next time.
Yeah. New changes this year.
Got to keep on that. Next, we have Andrew Wilson. Andrew was an active priest for many years in the Anglican Church. He is a former automotive engineer and has always sided with those on the edges of society. Andrew is on the board of a homeless charity and at the local hospital. He is always on a walk helping others. And so glad to have him back too.
Hello. So I can add an update too that I didn't think of is I spent the last year taking courses in mental health and addiction.
Okay, so we need to update your bios. You guys got to get on that.
Yeah. I only just thought of it 2 seconds ago, unfortunately. So I spent the last 6 months at the Windsor Downtown Mission.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
I'm still hanging out and taking walks and helping where I can. So,
well, I love that. Good for the both of you. Congratulations. Yeah. So this show on Lent, as an evangelical, I am completely Lent ignorant. In fact, I learned about Lent completely inebriated at Mardi Gras in New Orleans. That is the first I had ever heard of it. I didn't know anything. Everybody kept saying, "Oh, tomorrow's Lent," and that year it happened. Mardi Gras happened to land on my birthday, so it was, "Hey, welcome to my party." But I got a lesson on Lent, and it was. I remember thinking, "Wow, this is strange that I've never heard of this before." And someone said, "Oh, it's a Catholic thing," and I went, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." But I like the idea of giving something up. But I think that we have completely twisted it. And I think of a neighbor whose friend was dying of cancer. And he told me that he gave up smoking marijuana as a promise to God to make his friend better. And I said, "What good does that do your friend? Why aren't you giving up your time? Why aren't you giving up of your love? Why aren't you doing those things?" And he was like, "I never thought of that before." And he was raised a Catholic. So I definitely wanted to have this conversation to talk about the things that we should be giving up, the things that actually matter and make us a more loving community, society, and focus on actually loving our neighbors. So Tim, you're up top. What does Lent mean to you?
I've gone through the same journey of where for years I just gave up something. So for several years, I was giving up meat completely during Lent. And my partner made a really good observation. He says, "Instead of eating meat, you're eating seafood. What have you given up? You love seafood. So you're not suffering." And I'm like, but see, my partner was Catholic. So to him, Lent was about suffering.
Which I also think is misguided.
Yeah, it's a Catholic thing, and being from an Anglican tradition, we're not so big into suffering,
right?
That much. And finally, I saw a quote from Pope Francis, who said, "Give up hate, give up jealousy, give up materialism for Lent." And that was really transformative for me. It made me
Yeah.
realize giving things up, one, isn't going to make me closer to God.
Right.
Thinking I'm going to be cranky for 40 days, you know. But and I live a very simple life anyhow, because that's kind of my nature. So it's not like I had a whole lot to give up, you know. And but rather now it's what can I take on that I can carry with me the rest of the year.
Right.
You know, and this year a lot of stuff just came at me. I'm now working with a children's charity in the Philippines, and you know I'll be going there for a 1-month missionary trip in November, and that fell into my lap. What a perfect time in Lent. So my Lenten journey is focusing on developing a relationship with the people in the Philippines, so that when I go there in November, I already have a connection with them.
That's fantastic. I don't understand. No, let me rephrase that. The need to be loved through suffering is really just destructive and disgusting to me. And it's so prominent throughout
It's rooted
religions.
in Greek philosophy, because in the early church, the first couple hundred years, Christianity was about love.
Right.
Then the Greek patristic fathers got involved, and they brought with them their Greek ideas. And then, you know, Greek philosophy, there's a dualism. Flesh is evil.
Mm-hmm.
Spirit is good. So we must crucify the flesh. We must flagellate ourselves and punish ourselves. And Lent became 40 days of punishment. And if you're Orthodox, it can go as long as 50 days. And Coptic Christians take it to a whole nother level. You know, so
and evangelicals don't even know.
They don't know. No. Yeah. And it's all about flesh is evil. And that really has nothing to do with the teachings of Christ.
It comes from Zoroastrianism, actually.
Yeah. And of course, the Greeks picked that up, and then it made its way into the church. You know, we're created in God's image. How can God hate what God has created?
Well, and it's funny, today I had a conversation with a dear high school friend of mine, and she's like, it was about homosexuality, and between David and Jonathan. I'm sure you guys have seen the post on Facebook, but she came back and she's like, oh my God, you know, there's no way being gay back then was, you know, you'd be stoned to death. And I'm like, no, babe, they were Greeks. No. They were Greeks. No. We know all about the proclivity. I can't say it. The sexual needs of the Greeks, right. And the way they did everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was, you know, to change those types of things to go around. Andrew, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, ruminating on different things. Yeah, in Anglicanism, there's this idea of inconvenience as suffering.
I like that.
So maybe it's the English way.
Yeah, maybe.
So yeah, it's kind of a penitent action, and it's probably a reflection on the whole idea of going off to the desert for 40 days to contemplate. Yeah. Except we don't. We say things like, "I gave up chocolate for Lent."
Right.
Yeah. So how much chocolate goes into your face that 40 days makes an impact in your life?
Right.
And, you know, I throw that in the sermon, people laugh because it is kind of true. You know, okay, I don't drink wine. Well, how much wine are you drinking that it changes your space? Because one year I gave up coffee, and it did change my space because I'm a heavy user, you know, and I was working at the time. So I was in the auto plant, and it was a way to relax, right? You know, things aren't working. Sit down. Time for a coffee. I don't drink coffee over Lent.
Yeah.
And it was such a habit to sit there and then have to put it away. And I didn't substitute tea, because I did say, yeah, like just doing an exchange. I don't have dessert, but I have 2 glasses of wine. Well, you know, if it's calorie for calorie.
Well, and we see that in all aspects of life, right? People who are getting the bariatric surgeries are becoming alcoholics because they just switch their devices.
Yeah.
I want to post this, what Michelle said. It was not love through suffering. The idea I was raised with in the Catholic part of the family, it was about sacrifice. Jesus is sacrifice. So we would sacrifice by giving up something.
Yeah.
And I would argue that we need to give up exclusion and embrace diversity. We need to, give up hate, time for forgiveness, give up those types of things. But I still don't think it should be a sacrifice. I think it should be something that's willing and wanting to, kind of like Christmas, like, it's supposed to be about love and gifts. And then we get all convoluted and we scream at people because they took our parking spot.
Yeah.
We've lost the whole true meaning of how it can make us a better person. Yeah.
There's like an undercurrent. So I'm sorry, I forget the name of the lady who just posted, but Michelle, thank you. There's this undercurrent in many of the things we do in all the churches that don't come from theological teachings or doctrine, of people sitting down and going, what do these 40 days mean? They turn into stories and they morph. So we talk about the giving up without the idea of what it means, why we're doing it, what it's supposed to be doing. Right. So we think an undercurrent of penitence. Right. So I mentioned I'm at the downtown mission, and you hear a lot of things that do sound penitent, because I've done bad things to my family, so I did a thing, and now it's all even. Yeah. And because in addiction, quite often there's this immediacy that's demanded in their personality while it's active. But we all kind of suffer that, right? You brought up at the beginning, I gave up marijuana, so I'm punishing myself, therefore God will grant my wish.
Right.
So it's like, I read the Bible, and Jesus went a little harder than that.
Well, and my point was, what good is that doing for your friend? How are you, initiating love? How are you making his life better? He had stage 4 cancer. His time was limited. And Gabriel was like, oh, I'm just not going to smoke pot and God's going to heal him. And it was like, nothing in life works that way. You can't bargain through suffering. You can't, sure, as a child, I said way too many prayers about God. Just please don't let this happen, and I'll follow you forever.
Which is a natural human thing to do at any level.
Right. I think part of the issue is Christianity, unfortunately, because of Augustinian ideas, Christianity is focused on substitutionary atonement.
Yeah.
And Lent focuses on the cross, the symbol of that atonement. I'm moving away from that. I pretty much have moved away from that, because I realize, yes, Jesus does say to pick up our cross and follow him. But it's, what does the cross mean? Me giving up, I love Diet Pepsi. You take away my Diet Pepsi, I'm going to be a really grouchy person. That's my caffeine fix. I don't like coffee. People say, well, give up your Pepsi. I'm like, that's just from the devil. Don't even say that. No. But that's not going to bring me closer to God. It's not going to make me connected with fellow humanity any better. If anything, it's going to mess up my relationships with people, because I'm going to be grouchy.
But after a week, it goes away, right? Your headache goes away after a few days, and then you feel the habit. But what did it really change?
Right.
Your sugar content.
Right. So for me, picking up my cross means to emulate Christ, which the sacrifice Christ made for us, I don't believe was to save us from eternal hell, because I don't believe in hell, but it was to show us that we are not part of this world system. Right. We do not think like this world thinks. We don't treat one another the way the world treats one another. We need to rise above that. So picking up my cross is going over and helping my elderly neighbor paint their house.
Right.
It's talking to my neighbor across the street who is a little bit of a MAGA person with some really weird ideas. And I instinctually kind of want to avoid that. But he's dealing with cancer. And he's basically a nice guy. I got to get over myself and go over there and spend time with him. It's working with this charity. It's even taking time aside to do the podcast, because my personality is one to shut the whole world out and just be by myself. I'm a very solitary type person. So it's the sacrifice is putting others above myself and being a servant to all people. Me giving up something I like to eat or drink doesn't do anything for anybody. And I've often heard too, like, Lent is not the time to go on a diet. God doesn't care if you go on a diet or not. If you need to lose weight, but don't use God as an excuse to do it.
I can hear my commenters going, but no, the body is the temple of God.
Yeah.
Which is also another thing. I don't.
Temptation, right? We only have to worry about temptation in the 40 days of Lent. Any other time, double down in your Pepsi. Boil it down to a thick syrup so you can get twice as much in.
Or go to Mardi Gras and party your ass off until midnight on the day, before.
Like every addict before they go to detox.
Yeah, that was what I was like.
80% go on a binge the day before.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally Fat Tuesday is like the craziest day ever. I mean, it's just nuts in New Orleans. And that's why I kept hearing that, party tonight, prayer tomorrow, and, or something like that. And it was like, how does that work? It was so foreign to my evangelical brain. And
it's very pagan, really.
Of course it is.
Let's sin like nothing, the end of the world. And then tomorrow we'll get good with God.
Right. And
fix it on Sunday.
Yeah. And
I don't think jerk on Monday.
Right.
I don't think God doesn't care if we go out and have a good time on Mardi Gras. He doesn't care. I mean, we're supposed to enjoy life. Somewhere along the line, Christianity got this idea we're supposed to be miserable. Right. Jesus was accused of being a drunkard and a glutton because he was known to party a lot.
Water and wine.
Yeah. So,
and I even assert that he smoked hash because it goes back 5,000 years in that area.
Oh, he's probably over there doing hookah with everybody else.
Exactly. Everybody was doing it. Yeah. My degree is in comparative religion. I would need an additional PhD to be able to break down the denominations of Christianity. Literally, I mean, there's so many different paths that walk for Christianity, from Catholic to snake wranglers, right?
Right.
So I want to take a step back and admit my ignorance. What is the 40 days in my evangelical brain would be after the resurrection? What is the 40 days before?
It correlates roughly with when Christ, after he was baptized, went into the wilderness for 40 days to be tempted. In that I would say gospel myth. And
hi, I brought Michelle on because she was saying this stuff. This is my mentor, so I had to bring her on. Hi.
Hello, Michelle. All right.
Okay, so real quick. So finish what you were saying, Tim.
Yeah, so it kind of correlates with the 40 days that he went into the wilderness.
Okay, the temptations. Okay.
Now, ironically, our Muslim brothers and sisters are wrapping up Ramadan. And that correlates with the journey that Prophet Muhammad made. And so Ramadan and Lent really have a lot of similarities, because for Christians, Lent is about prayer, fasting, and giving to charity. And Ramadan, it's about prayer, fasting, and giving to charity. Kind of
some things right.
Yeah. The only thing is they do fast sun up to sundown.
Yeah.
But after the sun goes down, it's chow down and community time,
Which is
my landlord is actually Saddam Hussein's nephew.
Ooh.
So I see him walk that path every year. So this is Michelle. She was the one that was commenting. And I respect everything she says so much. But I wanted to ask you, Michelle, what do you think that those giving up with, you said, let me go ahead and put that back up. Chats. I got to learn this. You said a new thought. Show. There we go. A new thought, we give up those things that no longer serve us at the soul level, whether it's actions, food, relationships, etc. So how does that make you more loving?
Well, the idea is by doing that, you're going to take a closer walk with God, basically, and get in touch with that divinity that's already within you, that spark of divinity, whether you want to call it Christ in you or Namaste, I behold the spirit that's in you. And And when they were talking about giving up the different foods and drinks and that, I had written a reflection for the God article several years ago. And I had mentioned in there when I was the kid, because I, as you know, I grew up half Catholic, Jewish, plus Theosophists and a bunch of other things thrown in there. But for the Catholic part, like I said, the idea was that Jesus sacrificed. So you needed to sacrifice. What was your favorite thing? Well, at like 5 and 6 years old, it was ice cream sandwiches.
Mhm.
And that's what I gave up. As I got older, it became what I called my 4 basic food groups, which were cake, candy, ice cream, and soda. And then I realized probably about 35, a little over 35 years ago now, I realized that that wasn't at all what it was about. And like you were alluding to, it's not about just going on a diet for 40 days,
Right.
and stuff like that. But that was the point where I got involved in what I consider to be New Thought Christianity, which I found a unity church. And they're based on the teaching Bible. That's the basic text. And Jesus is our way shower. And when I started exploring all that and then tied it in with the other things that I had also learned and studied and to some degree experienced, because the Jewish part of my family welcome when you said, I want to explore. I have questions. And they
Yeah.
always encourage questions. And so anyway, I just, really evolved in my thinking. But I know there's a lot of people that do, they think that when they just give up liquor or wine, sodas, any of those kinds of things, that's all it's taken. To me, it's not about that at all. It is about that closeness. And so by eliminating the things that I'm surrounded by that are no longer serving or supporting me in some way, that's getting rid of all those things that get in the way of me remembering who I am and what I'm a part of. And so
And not eating a
I
Snickers
love
bar
it.
isn't going to do that.
No.
No.
And so the kind of tricky, for lack of a better word, part is to maintain that all through the year and not just this period of time that's set aside for that reason.
So I can see a natural progression from Jesus being tempted to removing our temptations. I can see that if that is, am I saying that right? That's where Lent comes into play.
Well, that's how some would interpret it. For me, because the temptation of Christ is one of the appointed gospels during our season, and in the temptation, Christ is tempted worldly power, he's tempted in the flesh, and the temptation to test God, put God to the test. And the way Christ rebuked all of that was to just quote scripture. Scripture says, and for me, I don't view it as so much, it's like we all deal with struggles, because we all want a comfortable life. We don't want to deal with inconvenience. And being Americans, we do live fairly comfortable lives, basically. I mean, now there are many people who aren't, but for right
but plumbing,
now,
like we were talking about before the show.
Yeah.
It is really nice in America.
Yeah, there's certain things that we enjoy the rest of the world doesn't. So it's easy for us to become where our faith becomes really shallow, and it's built upon materialism. The idea that if you have faith, you will be prosperous. Yeah, well, that's an American idea,
Right.
So I think Lent is a time to challenge ourselves to say, where's my spirituality really based? Is it selfish? Is it self-centered? If someone is saying, oh, I'm giving something up so I can be closer to God, that's selfish. Now, if someone says, I'm choosing to give up some, Starbucks for the month, and the money I'm going to save, I'm going to donate that to the local homeless shelter. Okay, now it changes the focus a little bit.
You know what?
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody say that.
No, I know. Yeah.
but that would be part of it. That's part of Ramadan. It's very intentional. What they take receipts.
Yeah.
Because they talk to each other, and it's Dad's job to make sure donations are made and that services are attended.
Yeah, they place a big emphasis on zakat. And one of the things I found humorous is if you slip up and don't necessarily follow the fast, with the way you can get around it is give more zakat, give more to charity.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you can make it up, and but even that though, it's like saying you're going to help someone else.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes down to what are we doing for the community?
Right.
And
I mean, the first post. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said Christianity, just sometimes we become so focused on ourselves, especially American Christianity.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's so many man-made rules.
Right.
Yes.
That when I was a young teen, or preteen, I can't remember which, during Vatican II. And I realized at that point, none of this stuff is God-made rules. These are all man-made rules, and they're subject to change at any time. I want to know what the God-made rules are that are going to work for everybody all the time, anywhere, and which started me on my quest. And but I think that we've just gotten to where so much of it is about the man-made rules.
Yeah. Well, religion is a human construct, and often our understanding of God is more our construct than it has anything to do with God. In the beginning, God created us in His image, or God's image, and then we created God in our image.
Right.
And the only thing Jesus, Jesus said.
My very first post about Lent was literally 15 years ago. Can't believe I've been on Facebook that long. But anyway, saying that I was giving up religion for Lent.
Yep.
And I think that a lot of people get, like you all are saying, so much of religion tends to be so selfish. It's our personal relationship with Jesus as opposed to loving your neighbor. As opposed to actually doing the things. Well, I believe that's enough for me to get into heaven, but you're an asshole. It's okay. I believe those types of things have been so misconstrued, and enables laziness, and enables isolation. It enables us to other people, and all of those things that are supposed to be anti-Christ, that anti-God. So, I mean, I said the other day on Facebook that worshiping God can be detrimental to society if it doesn't enable you to love your neighbor. And so many people think that they can just go to church and worship and then not have it implemented into their lives.
Right.
Well, and I wonder, what is your motivation? Is because there are a lot of people that's like, oh, I'm going to get a fast pass into heaven. Rather than just doing it because it's the loving thing to do.
Right.
And I've had a lot of people do and say things that it may not be what they meant, but it's the impression I've been left with is they're keeping God out of their lives. Not in a satanic sort of way, but if I go to church on Sunday and I'm a good person, I do this and that, God will leave me alone.
Wow.
God's not going to punish
distance.
Well, exactly. Because you're thinking, I got to be penitential. I got to not be happy. Because what happens when you're happy or you did something bad, God's going to get you.
Yeah.
And that's because so many people still believe that God is a separate entity rather than something that's everywhere present, including within us.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you guys, personally believe, but I just really think that changes your outlook a lot when you think it's something that's out there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Right.
Michelle, I think, Michelle, you hit on something so important there. It was St. Aquinas who said, God is being, capital B. God is not a being. God
Right.
is being. And in God's being, we have our being. And so God is in me, around me, in you, around you. God is not
Very
something.
pantheistic view.
Yeah, it's like an energy force, if you want to have, and for me, as I see God less as a father figure in heaven, more as a presence here now, it kind of changes everything, right? So
Right.
when
Yeah.
I see, like Michelle, if I see you, I'm seeing God looking back at me.
Right.
So many people want to say, oh, I want to be closer to God. Get close with your neighbor.
Right.
If you want to know God, go meet your neighbor.
And the same is with love too. If you want to feel love, give love.
Right.
I told
it's-
somebody that I'm working with doing a strategic plan, which I come from a spiritual point of view when we're doing those things. And I told her that if she has any days that she feels less than, to carry around a little hand mirror with her and just pick up the mirror, look in there, and you'll see the face of God. You won't feel separate anymore. And
I love that. Well, and I would also go on a little tangent that there is no Satan either. Everything is within us. In my book, I equate our ego to Satan and our love to God. All of the onus is on us. So if we want more of something, we need to give more of something. I don't think that unless you're giving up free time, unless you're giving up hate, unless you're giving up indoctrination, those types of things don't help the community. And I think that all of our focus every day should be on helping the community. I had a really weird thought the other day. I saw someone with dementia and I was trying to feel grace and overcome my own fear of it. And I just started laughing because I was like, man, if I get dementia, I'm going to be the most evil bitch ever. I try so hard to be kind. I try so, and then if that went away, and me unfiltered would be like, oh my God. But I think that effort is worthy. I think that effort is holy.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Satan, because I heard, and I've carried this with me for decades, evil is live backwards.
Yeah.
Devil is lived backwards. And so to me, when somebody talks about evil and the devil, and it's, yes, they're just living backwards. They're not in alignment with the things that they should be doing.
Right. And in Judaism, it's as soon as I said that, my brain stopped. Out of alignment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the devil has become, it's the boogeyman. We can blame everything on the devil, right? And again, that's a Greek idea that unfortunately got into the church, because Judaism has a whole different kind of understanding of what Satan is, and it's like in the story of Job, the Satan is not necessarily evil. He's just a tester, an instrument that's, and again, I don't believe the scripture literally. I think a lot of it's allegory, and it's trying to just give us some ideas of, I don't need a devil to scare me into being good. I don't need hell to scare me into loving people.
No, but you know what a lot of people do need it for is something to take responsibility, because they don't want to take
that's the thing. Devil made me do it, as dopey as that is. Well, no, go right back to Genesis there. A choice was offered.
Right.
Talk about that every day in the recovery program, about the choices and consequences.
Yeah.
And it comes back to how we perceive and the choice we make. So when I preach over Lent, I tell about people to take things on, not eating chocolate. because there's two things. There's the getting the more intentional and picking up practices that maybe you didn't have, to whether it's being active in the street, or I asked them for an extra hour in the church, like, is Sunday morning enough? Well, I don't think so. So what does an hour look like offering it in your community, whether it's in the building or with
I love that.
the community dinner or whatever? But when you take something on, you have to give something up, especially in North American life, right? Like every minute of your day is doing something. So what are you going to look at and actually really let go of?
Right.
So if you're putting an extra hour in your day saying it's Lent, I'm going to commit an hour to something theological. So whether that's whatever, an extra hour a day, I'm going to pick up the old prayers, and I'm going to do it 3 times or 5 times a day and get back into that. Well, what are you going to not do instead? You're not having that much wine or dessert or whatever. You're actually going to have to plan your day and be very intentional about how you commit to this.
Just to close that Satan loop, my girlfriend Heidi and I are always saying, "Not today, Satan," as jokes, something's going on. And then I saw a meme the other day that said, "Okay, today, Satan." But again, I don't believe anything is outside of us. I think that, the whole thing of God being in us, in our neighbors, seeing them, is truly divine thinking. And we just have to, we're so damn lazy. We just don't want to do the work. We don't want introspection. We don't want to look at ourselves. It's too painful. Healing is too hard. It's too scary. So ice cream is so much easier.
And
we can't really be loving God unless we are loving our neighbors.
Right.
And Tim, because we're all a part of the whole.
Right.
So if you're leaving anybody out, then, that's just not going to do it.
Tim, what were you going to say?
Imagine, if our focus on Lent is just giving something up, imagine how that message is going to be received by, I have some friends who live in Africa. They're poor. They're barely subsistence. And you're going to go ask somebody who barely has enough to give something up?
Right.
It's like they barely have enough now. So I think sometimes Lent should be also a liberation, when we can tell people, don't give up guilt for your Lent. Give up this idea that you have to do something to earn God's love, because God's love is free. It's there. We are the problem. I often find people say, well, I walked away from God. No, you didn't. You can't walk away from God.
Right.
The psalmist said, you can't hide from God. You may not recognize the presence of God in your life because we allow so many things to come in that distract us. So Lent can be a time where we sit there and say, what is distracting me from the pure love of God that sets me free from guilt and anxiety and frustration? And sometimes maybe, because I know, there's those people who the churches work to death, because they're always the first to volunteer. What if we as clergy said, you're not allowed to volunteer to do anything extra during Lent? You do enough. Your Lenten journey is to go home and enjoy family time.
So what are you giving up? Well, that thing that keeps God away from me, because if I do all this stuff, then God will leave me alone.
Right. Well, and you really
have why is God doing this to me?
Yeah. And Tim, you really put an American frame on that again, I didn't see. Years ago, I heard, do you know why people hate Americans? And it was like, oh God, why now? And they said, because of hot dog eating contests.
Right.
And to say the same thing, it's the whole, does it apply to the Africans? Does it apply to the South Americans? Was something that really broke my evangelical stronghold. That we're special and they're not, or we're blessed and they're not.
American exceptionalism.
Right. as soon as someone goes, well, so what about Africa? And I was like, holy crap, I never thought of that before. So that really broke that hold for me. And I think that, again, as Americans, we do go to the ice cream, we do go to the hot dogs, we do go to those. And the rest of the world is like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Ultimately, America's miserable. And Canada's miserable.
Right.
I'm in here in Canada, and we're similar in a lot of ways. We have the same stuff.
I'm so sorry.
If you go to, I know.
As an American, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, well, it's proximity.
Yeah.
Because that happens around the world. Proximity creates a certain likeness. You know, you go to the Middle East, you could say on one hand, all the food's the same, yet it's unique. But unless I'm eating it back to back, it seems so similar. But over Ramadan, we had a number of people sponsor lunches and bring it in at the mission. So I had lunch from Gaza, like literally from Gaza with love. So it was Palestinian, which had a lot of cinnamon in it compared to another one. Where was that one from? Syrian. So there's these subtle differences of chicken and rice. Oh, it's just chicken and rice.
Mm-hmm.
But there's that uniqueness. But for those of us who have been able to go to other countries and spend a little time there, there's a lot more happiness as we go in and go, well, why are they happy? They don't have VCRs or flushing toilets.
Showing your age there.
Clearly,
Andrew.
they
VCR.
can figure out how to go to the bathroom on their own.
Right.
You know, like running water is nice. And I know that I've had it for my entire life. But even in our countries, there are people that within our lifetimes or even younger don't have those things.
Yeah.
Now, do their lives suck because of it? You'd have to ask them. Because I know in the south of the States, it's very different. You don't necessarily have running water. You don't need heating. You know, I'm in Canada. It not having a building is really crappy in most areas in this country.
Yeah.
Because even if it doesn't snow, it gets cold and wet. And that's actually a bit worse than the cold.
Yeah.
Where I am, I'm even with the north of California. So my winter is it snows for a bit and then turns immediately to slush.
Yeah.
Which is worse. But there are people that it's a little more rare. My wife worked with a florist who didn't have electricity. She was in the Manitoba area. And when she was little, she's probably in her 70s now, is my best guess. But as a kid, they had an outdoor toilet and no electricity until the 60s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you know what a baby I am with the cold.
Yeah.
You're always teasing me about that being a baby with the cold. Oh my God. See, now that's suffering. I will give up outhouses for Lent. Oh my gosh.
I have a colleague.
We buy them on purpose. They're called cottages. They're awesome.
I have a colleague. He has an orphanage in, I think it's Dhaka, Bangladesh. He's in Bangladesh. And he's Christian, but some of the children are Muslim. And he had a little girl come up to him crying. She says, if I had a mom and dad, they would be able to give me a new dress for the end of Ramadan, their big celebration, the Eid.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing she wants is a new dress so she can end Ramadan in a new dress.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling my friend, my tech advisor, about it because he's got a 12-year-old daughter who's upset because she doesn't have the newest iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And
first world problems.
Yeah. And, you know, and I told him, I said, well, his daughter is a sweetheart, but she's raised here. So, you know, she doesn't have a worldview, but it does kind of bring us back to reality. There's a little girl in Bangladesh who all she wants is just a dress.
Yeah.
A simple dress. In the Philippines, the organization I'm working with there, one family, they were asked, what is it you need? They said, we just need shoes for our children. Our children are barefoot because we don't have shoes. And then
these are a special thing to me.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about that El Salvadorian man who came here as a teenager, fleeing the gangs in El Salvador, who's married to an American wife who has a child with physical needs, who got rounded up and shipped into a gulag that our government is paying for by accident. And now all our government can say is, oops, we made a mistake.
Literally, no. Yeah,
And
there's a technical error, typo.
yeah, and I'm thinking, what kind of horror must that man be going through? And the other 200 plus men who were shipped off to this gulag in El Salvador without any due process.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It infuriates me.
yeah.
The one thing,
So,
you know, I've been wrong about a lot of things in life, but the politics I have not been wrong about. And that makes me sick. It really does, to see the way that we are literally treating our neighbors, the way that we claim to be a Christian country and pro-life, and yet we are ripping wombs out of Mexican women. We are deporting people who just have a tattoo, celebrating their heritage. You know, no one cared about tattoos and people's, you know, happiness in January 6th. Our country is disgusting to me.
Yeah.
And as an ex-evangelical, but someone who still focuses on the love of God in everything I do, that I could take Lent and I could take this time and say, okay, I'm going to take this in 40 days and really focus, because I think doing that, if you shun the religious aspect of it and use it as a time to grow, to understand and love yourself more, that enables you to love others more, to honor yourself so you can honor others more. I think Fox News, turning off Fox News for half of the country would be the greatest blessing in all of the world. You know, not doing that indoctrination, but the fact that we are so selfish and just really focus on ourselves loses the whole point.
Yeah. For me, this Lenten journey, because I always refer to Lent as a journey. It's a
Okay.
You know, and so my Lenten journey is I don't know how to really express it, but it's like I'm feeling the weight of those who are being marginalized.
Yeah.
And I feel helpless, because I think all of us are feeling helpless right now. And I think Lent is letting me know it's okay to feel helpless. It's okay to feel like everything's out of control, because it is. You know, and all we can do at this point for right now is just remember those who are suffering and pray that God shows us how to intervene. What can we do?
I'm good with that. Pray for knowledge. You know, I'm always praying, may your will become my passion.
Yeah.
So that I try to be in alignment.
Yeah.
Michelle, do you still practice Lent? Did you give up anything this year?
Oh, for years. Yeah, I still give things up, but it is negative thinking, any judgments. I do forgiveness work, just anything like that I know is just kind of keeping it's in the way of who I really want to be. And my focus is on, you know, as I often say, I do believe that God is love, and that if we are truly born in that image and likeness, which I believe, it's on the spiritual level, and we're all loved too. And our purpose for being here is to be expressions of that love. And so anything that I feel like is getting in the way of me being an expression of love, that's what I give up.
That's why she's my Yoda. Andrew, you're practicing? Can we ask what you gave up this year, or what you did for
I
Lent?
didn't give anything up.
Okay, so sorry for the phrasing.
And I didn't take anything on, now that I think about it, because I am a taker honor kind of person. So did I do a purposeful 40-day journey this year? No, it didn't really occur to me, because there's things going on that I'm helping with and moving into. So I was invited into stuff. So I should probably give up taking things on to, you know, follow the if I may be so crass to say, grandma's version of theology. You know, you have to have no desserts over Lent. Because I do have kind of the constant study and introspection and the good fight here, there, and everywhere. Like right now, we've got an election coming up. we just had a couple of elections, and a lot. One thing, because we're a bunch of navel gazers throughout the world, it's the only problems exist in our country.
Right.
So our house prices went up. Everything's cheap in America, right? And you don't have homelessness or addiction issues.
No.
That's only in my
Not at
town.
all. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, and we're having some of the same things. Like right now, our current premier, same as your governor. It's nice that they decided they're going to put $750 million over a few years into addiction issues, but they also closed all the safe addictions or safe injection sites. I don't know if you have that in the States,
No,
but
I know about them now.
yeah. So they got nurses and clean supplies, and they make sure you don't die. That's
Right.
kind of important. And then there's dumb stories around it where you get free drugs there. There'd be a really big lineup if
Right.
there was free, clean drugs at those places. But they shut them down with silly stories about, well, they can't be near a school. Yeah, really. So you close the sites, the school, they're going to be using at the school instead.
Right.
And there's all these fights. And what's drives me nuts is they talk about the tents and tent cities and the garbage. So in those words, what was missing?
People.
Exactly.
Humanity.
We shouldn't have to look at that. And I went through that. I'm a taxpayer. I shouldn't have to look at that. These are people. You're complaining about tents.
But if they see it, they have to act. That's why.
Bingo.
That's
And
why
that's the Lenten journey.
Yeah.
You have to
And,
see
and
it.
to say that you don't celebrate Lent, or you're not celebrating this year, it's 40 days. I know
Well,
you're
I'm
working.
celebrating. It's just I'm not doing the traditional practice of giving up
Well,
chocolate.
Well, I mean by you do
Or is it
this
tradition?
365.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
so it's not something that
It's
you
in my nature. And
Right.
yeah, maybe I did a terrible job because I didn't think about it. Well, Lent's coming up. What am I going to purposefully add or remove from my life? So I could be wrong in that, and God's going to get me. I don't know.
with love.
With love. But I do make fun of that. You know, like I say all the time. Yeah, like how many of us are gonna show up at St. Peter there, and they're gonna look at your punch card from church and went, "Oh, you one Sunday short, you have to go to hell." I don't think it works that way. You lit the candles backwards. It's the right one. You did it 6 times. No more than 5 where you're going, no. You were a horrible human being that took great pleasure in spitting on homeless people and make sure they didn't have any tents within your viewing distance.
I have this very Catholic friend, and he refused to eat meat on Fridays.
Yep.
And it was right when I was starting the book and really starting to shed some of the indoctrination.
They almost all do it. It's so normative that it's weird. If they don't.
And I could not find any legislative laws on, when I was looking for that. But I looked at him and I said, "Do you really think you're going to get to heaven?" And he's going to say, "Oh my God, on May 4th, you had meat. You're out of here." And his response was, and I still just shake my head because he's a Trumpster, of course. But he said, "I'd rather have that in my favor than have another check against me."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, if that's going to be a check, do you really want to be there?
Yeah.
And
I say I've done way worse things than any of that.
Right.
Yeah.
He's a Trumpster. So
Yeah.
I would.
So we know he's done way worse things. We talk about, if we want to go straight biblical, what is it said about your heart?
Right. He's a good guy. I love him to death. I've loved him for years.
But there's a but in that. I had this conversation the other day with somebody, and she was a staunch conservative and loves Pierre Poilievre, who we call Trump Jr., amongst other things. And it's the same sort of stuff. And it was that gish gallop of garbage coming out of her.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to be kind and loving, but at the same time, I want to reach forward and going, "How are you this stupid?" And you go out and you pay and you think, "Oh."
Right. And I haven't thought about this for a while, but it seems to me there was a line in the Bible where Jesus had said, "It's not what goes in your mouth, it's what comes out of your mouth."
Exactly.
But as my mother used to say, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
I go to school. I go to church on Sundays. Yeah, and you're a dick on Monday.
Right.
Yep. And Wednesday and Thursday.
Right.
But have you noticed though, there's a correlation between we, like here in the US, Andrew, we know that Trump is transactional. The MAGA movement is very transactional.
Yeah.
And yet,
addicts.
and yet they claim to be diehard Christians, but their Christianity is transactional. Hey, I got my punch card. I got to check off all the right boxes, because if I don't check off the right boxes, God is going to reject me.
Yes, and that's sad and scary at the same time.
Yeah, and yet those of us in a more faith tradition that does maybe we reject the idea of hell. You know, we don't believe in eternal fire and punishment. We don't think we're all born into sin the way Augustine presented it. You know, and our understanding of sin is not. It's not like this horrible thing. They can't stand us, and I think what it is because they can't stand the fact we're happy. You know, it's like, how dare you be happy? How dare you be excited and talking about love and God? No, you can't be that way, because we're not transactional.
Something came through my news feed a few weeks ago, where a minister was talking about Matthew 25 and preaching about it. And after the service, he had parishioners that were telling him that he had gotten way too liberal and they didn't want to hear any messages like that anymore. And he's like, you know, go look at your Bible.
I think that the greatest way to gauge anyone is by their fruit. Right. So, you know,
and that's what Jesus preached. It's by your fruit.
Right.
What's your fruit?
Yeah. He never said you're nuts.
Yeah. But I mean, you can look at any scenario across life outside of religion in any aspect of life and say, is your fruit good? You know, I used to say to my ex-fiance, you can say anything you want, but you're going to have to be accountable for it. And the lack of accountability, with exception from judgment from humans as opposed to love from God, really issues in rotten fruit. And I see
God,
that all over.
Neighbor. Everything hangs on these.
Pardon me?
Love God, love your neighbor. You know,
everything hangs on these. Yes.
All the law hangs on these.
And I would say that a truly holy and loving God would say, don't worry about me. Focus on your neighbor.
Exactly.
You know, only an egotistical God would say, you know, hey, give me mine. And I think that's a big problem in religion.
But the focus is on being an enforcer. I'm not sure where that comes from, because I do
Zoroastrianism.
Yeah, I have. It's hard to see that. Yeah, I'm going to heaven. Why? Because I beat on. Where's that in the Bible? It said, "Love God, love your neighbor." Yeah, I love them with the baseball bat.
Right. Right. Well, another fantastic show, and definitely not long enough, but we are already at the top of the hour. This has been fabulous. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on. I wanted to hear your thoughts, and they've been so precious, as always.
Well, thank you.
Tim, any final words, and where can people find you?
St. Francis ISM is on Facebook and YouTube now, and we do a live stream mass at 10:30 Pacific Standard Time every Sunday. And my tech advisor is riding my butt to expand on Instagram and grow a presence there as well.
You can't stream on Instagram. It's really hard, but we'll talk about that after the show.
Yeah. At least do little short video clips.
Yeah.
You know?
Any final words?
I'm good.
Andrew, where can people find you?
Andrew M. Wilson on Facebook. I don't do a lot of stuff on there in the last little bit, but feel free to friend me. And if you want to have a nice theological argument, I'll expect receipts.
And just to warn you, Andrew is sarcastic as fuck. And that's part of the reason I love him so much.
I'm sorry.
I love it.
I should have given that up for Lent.
It's, you know, it's this whole thing of like, wow, it's so intelligent. Sarcasm is so intelligent.
I'm trying to get people to think by saying it in a backwards way. And I guess that comes off as sarcasm sometimes.
Or online just being a dick and you're not. So I love that.
I could be. I don't know. I have my moments where I'm so done that it's just like, I can't. But like I said, the other day, I was a good boy. I listened to what she had to say. I refuted as best I can when I could break in. But
with love.
Exactly. I
And
wasn't mean.
Michelle?
I said it was nice to meet her, and I shook her hand, and after she wasn't looking.
Michelle, thank you again for joining us. Where can people find you if they want to reach out, and any final words?
On Facebook, because I don't have an active website or anything anymore since I've officially retired.
But your love and compassion and brilliance is always available. If only to me, that's all that matters.
Yep.
Okay, everyone. Thank you. Go ahead.
I was just saying that's why we're here.
Yes, exactly. I love all of you so very much. And I think this was a fabulous show. I'm going to send you back. What's that?
It was fun.
It was fun.
And I love fun. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to send you backstage and close the show. Thank you again. And keep focused on your Lent. Where's Tim? Tim, I can't. Oh, there's so many people here. Bye, Tim.
I
It won't let me remove you. Okay, so you're just going to sit here with me. Okay. Another fantastic show. Thank you for watching and joining the conversation. I want to give a big thanks to Patrick Young for his continued success and support as my producer. Don't forget to check out my book and the follow-up course. Let's create some real change through healing, community, and knowledge. If you like the show, share it, like it, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful week. And as always, walk in love. Mwah! See you next week.